Well, it is time for another edition of the Baker-Lee Debates, and joining me on my right is Dr. Ian Lee of Carleton University, and on my left, the esteemed Senator from Newfoundland, George Baker. Welcome to you both. Before we get started, there are 3 by-elections coming up tomorrow. The most hotly contested one, of course, is in Calgary Centre, and it hasn't been in play for more than 4 decades. So here is your weekly West Block Primer. Ever since Pierre Trudeau's time, Calgary Centre has been a Conservative stronghold. Back then, whenever a candidate from another party popped up, it was knocked right back down. In the 1980s, Brian Mulroney's Conservatives racked up 2 consecutive majority governments by winning ridings like Calgary Centre, where voters quickly clobbered any challengers. Under Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, the riding swung even further right, taking out any Liberal or NDP contenders who were willing to stick their necks out. And with a Prime Minister from their own backyard, Calgary Centre has stuck to its roots, swiftly knocking out any challengers to the Conservative seat in the last 3 elections. But this time around, voters are playing coy with who they'll knock down, and victory for the Conservatives, well, that's no longer a sure thing. They only have a slim lead over the Liberals. Voters will make their final choice tomorrow, but could the fact that this even turned into a race mean that the political sands are shifting in the Conservative heartland? Well, let's get the debate underway. First of all, your prediction, Ian Lee. What's going to happen tomorrow in Calgary Centre?
Well, I predict that it is John Crockett, the Conservative candidate, is going to be re-elected, but in the spirit of bipartisan compromise and fairness for Senator Baker, I want to give, to use a hockey metaphor, I want to give a first and second assist to the Conservative election victory to Justin Trudeau, first assist, and the second assist to David McGuinty for taking that mallet from the West Block Primer and pounding the Liberal candidate into a loss.
Senator, your pick.
Look, I think the Liberals are going to win that by-election. Not just because we have a really good candidate, but because of what's happened with Justin Trudeau and the publicity surrounding it. You know, he went in and he said, look, let's get Nexon underway. Let's get development in Calgary underway and the rest of Alberta. The Conservatives, of course, have not approved that deal. The NDP are opposed to it. I must say, Dr. Lee, you were absolutely right on Nexon. The government is not approving it. I thought they would. So what do? They dig up this material out of context from 2 years ago on Justin Trudeau. They demand an apology. All the publicity then centers around what the Prime Minister had said about Atlantic Canadians, that they're lazy, that they're dependent, and that they're, they've given up. And he was demanded an apology. They demanded an apology. Every premier, including Joe Clark as well in Calgary, demanded. The Prime Minister refused. Justin Trudeau gave an apology, although it was taken out of context. So you see, Justin Trudeau, a smiling, intelligent, competent young man, compared to the other 2 leaders, the NDP and the Conservative leader. One of them grumpy and angry all the time, and the other fellow sort of haughty above it all. The medium is the message. The message is Justin Trudeau is by far better than the other 2. And that will lead to a Liberal victory.
I just want to agree with one part, or at least sort of agree with you, Senator Baker. I don't think he should have apologized. I want to defend both Justin and David McGuinty, for that matter, because to use Tom Clark's excellent phrase in the Bob Rae interview, they were both providing a window into the soul of the Liberal Party. So they were speaking with what we would call their inner voice, not their outer voice. They were speaking truth to power. They were telling us how they really feel about Alberta and Western Canadians. And so I think that they did a noble public service.
Well, they were criticizing politicians. Prime Minister Harper was criticizing a whole group of people in Atlantic Canada. There's quite a difference.
Okay. I want to go off of this topic, but sticking with Western Canada, issues that are important out there. The premiers gathered last week in Halifax. They're working out a new national energy strategy, they're calling it, headed by Alison Redford, the Conservative Premier of Alberta. Yes. You heard Bob Rae just a few moments ago saying it's high time we had a national carbon pricing system so that we can move towards a cap and trade system or a carbon tax. Good idea, bad idea? And Senator Baker, I'll start with you.
Look, a national energy strategy is what he said. And you asked about carbon pricing. And you were correct, I just listened to you say that carbon pricing includes not just a carbon tax, but it also includes and/or cap and trade. Well, the biggest proponent of carbon pricing was the Conservative government in their platform in 2008. And then in 2009, Jim Prentice went around the country having federal provincial meetings on carbon pricing. Result, British Columbia has carbon pricing, Alberta has carbon pricing, and so does Quebec. So to suggest, as some very prominent experts have suggested, including Dr. Lee, that if you have a national energy strategy, that automatically means that you agree with a new carbon tax. Well, we just did our report in the Senate, headed by David Angus, the most conservative jurist in the country. You know, to suggest that because he advocated a national energy strategy, that he was suggesting a carbon tax would be like calling Prime Minister Harper a socialist.
Well, the national energy strategy that is being advocated by both the NDP and the Liberals, let's be clear, I'm a bit mystified. We have a national energy strategy. It's called the marketplace of supply and demand, allocating technology and capital and resources. Nonetheless, I can understand why your party and the NDP are so big on this national energy strategy, because you've got environmentalists in both parties, very strong environmentalists, committed to the 3 R's. The most important of the two of them are reuse and recycle. And I think what you're doing, and the other party is doing too, you are reusing and recycling Pierre Trudeau's national energy program. I call it NEP 1.0. What you're proposing is 2.0. And the difference is it's a carbon tax. Okay, the NDP want a cap and trade. It's a distinction without a difference. Both of these taxes are going to raise gargantuan amounts of revenues. And that's why, and it's a hidden tax, and that's why I call a carbon tax or cap and trade, it's Viagra for Liberal and NDP politicians, because you want to use these revenues to excite and stimulate the government to make the government of Canada a lot bigger.
A national energy strategy includes alternate energy sources. You know, wind energy. We're 13th in the world in the generation of electricity by wind energy. We have the largest solar farm in the world, in Sarnia, Ontario, largest in the world. We've got clean coal, we've got natural gas, we've got hydro. But one of the most outrageous things of all in this country, this oil-producing country of Canada, is that 1/3 of all the crude oil that we consume in this country comes from a foreign nations overseas. 1/3. That's why the price of gasoline in Ontario and Eastern Canada is way higher than Western Canada. We're on global rates, they're on North American oil rates. You know, and the premiers last week, they said, okay, let's solve this now. Let's have a pipeline from Alberta going down to Atlantic Canada. Prime Minister, will you come to a meeting and sit down with us? Prime Minister says no. What does he do? He's searching for ways to try to discount Justin Trudeau. So I'm sure you will agree with me that his place was at that meeting in Halifax for a national energy strategy to put a pipeline across this country.
There is going to be a pipeline, let's be clear, and I think the Prime Minister understood that. Brad Wall, the Premier of Saskatchewan, didn't attend either. They understand that it's going to go there. Remember, the discount, the reason we have this two markets, one for West, one for East, that was set up under your party, by the way, and back in the 70s and 80s. And so what we're going to be doing, the country is going to be doing, is overcoming that strategy by running the pipeline down, and Atlantic Canada and Eastern Canada are going to benefit about $1 billion a year because, of course, landlocked oil is lower priced than foreign oil. Now, so we need 3 pipelines, one to the east, one down to the Gulf of Mexico, and one to BC.
Okay, I'm not ending this debate. I'm merely adjourning it for a week or two because we got to pick it up. But before we go, Dr. Lee, this is Grey Cup Sunday. Who are you choosing?
I am choosing the Calgary Stampeders because my late mother came from Saskatchewan, and I have many members of family out in Western Canada. And if I chose Toronto, my late mother would come back and haunt me.
Senator Baker.
Oh, I'd have to choose Toronto then. I agree with the mayor of Toronto. I wouldn't want him to have to produce his body weight to the food bank if he loses, because that would be an incredible windfall for the food banks in Toronto.
Senator George Baker, Ian Lee, thank you both very much.